Hello, I'm Philip Silverstone. What exactly does that mean? Stick around, and over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you.
You need to meet our next guest, Mr. Phillip Silverstone. How nice to meet you.
Oh, there's a white.
Yes, what exactly?
Hello. Will I ever get tired of that introduction from Lionel Blair and Gabby Rosin on that wonderful British show When the World Was Young? Welcome to Silverstone Live on Facebook, with the recorded videos available here on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel immediately after the live show. Each week I cover fashion, music, wine, theatre, film, and anything else that floats my boat, and I'm hoping it floats your boat. That's why some of you come back. And of course, you know that this is a shorter video version of my weekly podcast, which you can listen to on TuneIn Radio. And having recovered now from that horrendous period of time after my accident, the TuneIn show is coming back with some great guests. Just post your thoughts and comments during this live show below the live stream, and this week's guest will address as many of your questions and comment as possible in the next hour. Gail Freedman isn't an easy person to pigeonhole, and that's fine with me. For one thing, our tastes melded beautifully recently when Gail, unbeknownst to her, introduced me to an amazing video of ballerina Tatiana Osipova, who performs with the Bolshoi Theatre, dancing so deliciously to Ave Maria, sung by Sumi Joe. Now, that was on social media, which goes to show there is some point to Facebook after all. And by the way, I'm going to put that on our Facebook page. It is totally awesome. And it also gives us an insight into Gail's earliest love, and that was clearly classical music, since her ambition was to be a concert pianist. However, you know, life being such a cunning little devil took Gail down a different artistic path, and for almost 2 decades she has been an huge award-winning, I sound like Donald Trump, I shouldn't use that word, sorry. She has been an award-winning filmmaker. Gail has produced, directed and written dozens of documentaries on a wide range of subjects through her company Parrot Productions. Among her films is Making the 9/11 Memorial, which is a primetime special for the History Channel when the memorial opened. Gail's lens on life has included many independent projects, as well as extensive work for PBS and network and cable television, and our favourite, the internet, along with educational and non-profit films. Good for Gail. Gail was also producer of the indie feature The Onyx Project, starring a previous and adored guest on my podcast, David Strathairn. Gail's CV includes working on CBS 60 Minutes and ABC 2020. Her latest documentary, which she is eagerly waiting to talk to us about, is called Hot to Trot. It follows several hugely talented same-sex dancers as they compete for dance competitions, while at the same time revealing their complex lives, both on and off the dance floor. The film is beautiful. Haha, that's not very good when you don't edit. But I have been drinking water, and that's what happens when I don't drink alcohol. So let's go back to what I was going to say. The film is beautiful. It's uplifting. It's heartbreaking. It's triumphant, and so relevant to today's social and political world. Gail is waiting patiently in our virtual green room, drinking a non-virtual drink, and she'll join me in 3 minutes' time to talk about Hot to Trot. But first, here is the official trailer for her documentary. Be amazed. Just be amazed.
All the way from Yonkers, New York, Ernesto Palmer dancing with Nikolai Shvakov. Your US champion, Emily Kieren from San Francisco. April Folly same-sex dance sport competition. Our evening extravaganza begins right now with a showcase of champions.
Dancing is going to be one of the last bastions of homophobia to fall, because it is a vertical expression of a horizontal desire.
Don't pull.
You're not leading. You're not leading.
Who you leading?
Yes.
He's Russian and I'm Latino. Culture-wise, he's really dominant, and I'm more passive. I didn't ever had a childhood that I would say like someone inspired me to be something. You know, it makes me feel like, oh, I accomplished this, even though I don't have all these other things that other people do have.
To my parents, I finally came out about like when I was 30. I was married, you know. I tried to do, you know, the right thing, you know.
There is no guy's part.
Right. And there's no girl's part.
No.
It's just, you know, it's just parts and somebody does them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For me, the biggest stressor on competition day is my blood sugar, not the actual dancing. I have type 1 diabetes and I've had it my entire life. I was diagnosed when I was 3.
I didn't want to actively kill myself, but if something happened and I was no longer around, that would be just fine. And dance was a huge part of keeping me on the planet.
I got a phone call one Saturday afternoon. Kieren said, I've got something to tell you. I think I'm gay.
When she told me, my first thought was, oh, okay. What are my friends going to say?
So excited, and I just can't hide it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Here at Gay Games 9 at the dance sport event.
Yesterday we were not even on the plane yet, and I had a meltdown. My blood sugar shot through the ceiling completely unexpectedly, and I just kind of lost it. I didn't want to dance, and I didn't care how it went. That's never happened to me ever before in a competition.
I was a total drug addict. Totally 100% drug addict.
Of what?
Crystal meth.
How long did you use meth?
Total of 5 years. If I'm destroying the only thing that I had, which is my beauty, what do I have after that?
I told my father, I understand you embarrassed. I understand it's gonna be not the topic of conversation at the table with your friends. And I said, listen, if like you can't deal with this, I understand, but you know, this is what I'm doing.
Some cheekbones. We all want cheekbones.
It's going to be a close call tonight in this World Championship final.
I love that. Oh my God, I've watched it a couple of times. I'm going to watch it many more. That was the trailer from the new documentary Hot to Trot. Welcome again to Silverstone Live this Friday night when it's live, and welcome to the recorded versions if you're watching them. That was the trailer from the new documentary Hot to Trot, opening Friday the 24th, and I am privileged to have today's guest, who is the film's producer and director, Gail Freedman. And bloody hell, Gail, that was a long trailer, longer than my introduction. Welcome. I can't believe you and I are finally meeting one another. I feel like I've known you forever.
Thank you, Phil. It's really a thrill to be here. We actually have a shorter theatrical version of the trailer, but this one actually lets you know the characters a little bit more.
I like it. I mean, I was hoping it would just be the whole film, and I'd just forget about tonight's show and just watch the whole film. Let me just start off, Gail, and this is one of the reasons why, and my audience knows this, that I always insist on looking at the work that the guest has created, so that I can make my own observation and commentary. And it's interesting, maybe to get your thoughts about this, but your film, for me, Gail, is very much like a novel, which begins with a single creative spark, and then the characters in the author's mind, and also on the author's blank page, take over the story and the plot, and the author becomes the conduit for their story to the reader. Your characters in your film were probably not going to be as captivating or charismatic in your original storyboard as they turned out, with such incredible baggage in their backstories and one or two absolutely mesmerizing personalities in the group. So that's just my take on this. Am I anywhere close to what happened?
I love that comment. I mean, the idea that it's novelistic for me is one of the nicest things you could say. I knew that each one of those individuals had a fabulous backstory, but where it was going to take us over the course of the 4 years that we filmed, there was no way for me to know that. And so we went on this journey together, and it's exactly right. I am the conduit. That's a beautiful way to put it, because there is no voice of God narration. There never was going to be. Their stories were going to unfold how they unfolded. And that's what dictated the shape of the narrative. And, you know, in some ways, with some things we got lucky. And whatever it was going to be, it was going to be. And I was smiling as you were playing the trailer, because I've really come to love each and every one of these people.
You and me both, except I don't know the people, maybe one day. But so you followed. I mean, these, you know, I have these thoughts while I'm watching a project, and I have some of your backstory, knowing some of the production notes about what went into this. So I'm watching the film, and I'm having these like nightmarish thoughts. For example, you followed the dance partners for 4 years. What if halfway through the film something critical had happened, as it might have done in one case, but we won't reveal that? Would you have abandoned those particular participants, or would the film have collapsed like dominoes?
Well, as you know, there were some things very unanticipated that did happen, and we incorporated that into the film. I was really committed to these individuals. I mean, there were some equally wonderful people and wonderful human beings who I met early on and who didn't end up having featured roles in the film, although they danced through it. And it was either because their dance relationships didn't persist, or they weren't as comfortable with the process of being on camera, or there's a number of reasons that casting goes the way it goes. But once I was in with these folks, I was in with these folks. And, you know, they obviously also, once they were in on this, had an interest in seeing it through. Although, I will say, they have told me this. Other people, other filmmakers have set out to make a film like this, and some of them had actually even participated, and the other films, for one reason or another, didn't come to fruition. So there was a real leap of faith on their part in going with me on this journey, because they weren't sure I was going to be able to finish. I mean, we put this film together with, you know, chewing gum and paper clips.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was an act of faith on everybody's part to just keep going, and I'm so glad we did.
Well, I think it was also an act of bravery, but it was also an act of passion. And I've said this in another way in a post that I think you picked up on, but this film is sold, let's say, or presented to the audience as a documentary about same-sex dancers participating in same-sex dance competitions. But that's like saying Selma was a march by people crossing a bridge. What you've created is a commentary on our society, on cultural differences, showing the hatred so many amongst us still painfully suffer today. And that goes beyond this being a same-sex dance film.
I love what you wrote and that you picked up on that. That meant a huge amount to me, because you're right. It's packaged as a film about same-sex dance. And it takes place in that gorgeous, little-known world. But at heart, for me, it's a character film. And it is indeed about this kind of nexus of art and politics, if you will, which for me is a real sweet spot. And that was what really floated my boat in going ahead and deciding that I was in all the way to get this film done one way or another. So yes, on one level it is about same-sex dance, but on another level it's much more universal. And you don't, if you love dance, then you're a natural audience for this film, but you don't have to love dance. You can think you don't care about dance. If you're impassioned about LGBT issues, yes, you're a natural audience for this film, but you might think that you're not and still come to something in here, because there's one review we've had already from a very lovely blog poster, and she said that she thought that this film about a niche of the dance world offered an opportunity to explore what it means to be human. And again, that was another comment that I really loved, because I agree. I mean, that's, the times, for better and mostly for worse, have caught up with the film. I was afraid early on in some ways that I was fighting the zeitgeist, that when I started, so many films were doomy and gloomy and looking at so many of the tragedies and the catastrophes in our lives, and God knows I've made those films. But this is a film that is, although there's pathos and there are painfully real things that happen, at heart it's an optimistic and hopeful film. And right now, given where we are in the world, we're all sort of desperate for something that's hopeful and has a bit of positivity and optimism, because that's so hard to find. So
yes.
We've kind of come full circle.
And you've just used a word that that came to me when I watched this. I suddenly became very unusual for me, quite serious and quite poetical and poetic. And I was writing down. I don't write when I'm watching a film. I believe that would be the equivalent of going into a fine restaurant and pouring ketchup over the meal. So I would never do that. I would never distract myself that way. But afterwards I think about it. And if I were to categorize your film as it relates to the documentary genre, Gail, for me it's a fusion of observational and performative documentary. And in addition, it's a work of art which blends music, dance, and the ethos of our time and the pathos of Shakespeare. I don't know, somehow the poet came out of me in that, but does that also sound like I've nailed what I'm watching?
Well, in my fantasy, for sure. I'll hire you. Yeah. I mean, yes, that's certainly what we were aiming towards. And my film editor, Dina Pataki, who is an incredible artist.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely fabulous. And Dina and I have been making films together for 20 plus years now. Mm-hmm. And she was completely my partner in crime on this project. And from the beginning...
Since you were both, we should point out to the audience, since you were both 12, right?
Oh, exactly right.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
I was 12 and she was 13. Yes. That's exactly right. And Dina was in on this from the very beginning with me. And we wanted to do exactly everything that you've just put into more beautiful words than would have occurred to me. But there was, and it's lovely when people can appreciate and see into what your aspirations were, because you don't know, you get so close to it. And you can take this film on a very literal level about, here are these dancers and they are training for the big enchilada of dance competitions, which in their world is this quadrennial event called the Gay Games. Or you can really engage really humanistically, which is what we hoped would happen. And yes, of course, that speaks to our times, and it speaks, we hope, to values and ideals and aspirations. And for me, these characters spoke to all of that. Better than I could have possibly if I had imposed some narrative on it. And so,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm going to come to that in a minute. I've got, this needs to be 5 hours long. I am bursting with questions. Let me just say hi to up in Bonnie, Scotland, to Rabina. Hi, Rabina. Hope you're well, my love.
Hi, Rabina.
Yep, there's Rabina. She's a good friend of the show. Deborah Silver Sorkin. Hi, Deborah, and love you. And there's a lot of people hiding out there, but these are the people that let us know. So you devoted, as I just said, 4 years of your life to travel with the dancers in this film, and you probably became, I'm assuming, you've just said it anyway, one large family. Did you have any idea you would devote so much time of your life so passionately to this one project? And the most important question I have is, are these, I want to call them performers or actors. They're not actors. They're real people. Well, actors are real people, but you know what I mean. Are these dancers, are these artists you profiled still in touch with you?
Absolutely. Very much so, which is one of the loveliest parts, I think, of being a documentary filmmaker, is that you are dealing with real life and real human beings. And for me, I take that as a real privilege, and I love still having people in my life who I've met through making a film. So yes, I didn't know how long I was going to take. We filmed for 4 years, we edited for another year, and now we've been on the circuit, the festival circuit, for another year after that.
Yep.
So I've actually known these folks now, most of them, for going on 6 years. I did not know originally that it was going to take that long. I started in 2012. My original notion, which was probably much more conventional, was that we would go through the Gay Games in 2014. The Gay Games are kind of the Olympics of the same-sex world. Every 4 years in a different city around the globe, they have all the usual sports, but dance is also a competitive sport called dance sport. So that was my original notion. It was a very conventional notion, and I'm glad it didn't work out that way, and it was partly because I didn't have any money. So when we got to the Gay Games, I felt that the arc of the film wasn't complete and that we had to keep going. And that turned out to be a good thing. So the Gay Games are the climax of the film, but not the finale, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I almost was thinking, is this where it's going? Oh, thank goodness she's taken a little sidestep here. Let me just say hi, and I've put this on the screen, but let me say hi to Carol Campbell. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
And a friend of yours who says, great interview, and I've put that up on the screen. I know you can't see it. It's Susan Levitt. She says, hi, Gail. Great interview. So Susan's enjoying watching you tonight.
She's been a friend and a fan for many years.
Well, good. Any friend and a fan of you. What did you say? I didn't hear what you said. What did you say? Oh, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear what you just said about her.
Susan's another filmmaker.
Oh, Susan's a filmmaker. Oh, okay. Well, we'll have her on here.
We worked together at CBS back in the day.
Is she any good?
Yes.
Yeah?
You're asking.
She's not as good as you, though. We know that. But, okay, Susan. I mean, yeah, Susan. We'll talk. So, listen. This is another thing that I have to ask you here, and I love it. I love this line. I mean, I'm not going to ask you because I know it wasn't, but I almost feel like it should have been scripted if it wasn't in the film. A statement was made in Hot to Trot that, quote, dancing is the last bastion of homophobia to fall. So do you, Gail, feel that you are contributing through this film to breaching that fortress?
Well, again, that's a wonderful aspiration. That was Barbara Zoloff, one of the real pioneers of the same-sex dance scene in America, gave that line. She said that dance is going to be one of the last bastions of homophobia to fall because it is a vertical expression of a horizontal desire. Great line. And ballroom in particular, I think that's true because ballroom dances are so evocative of love and romance and sexuality. And I hope that we can, in our own small way, change hearts and minds. I mean, that's certainly where I grew up in the business. That was kind of one of the big motivations, excuse me, for doing this work. And, you know, you probably got this from the film. In mainstream dance, same-sex couples are not allowed to compete. They assume that it's in the rules. It's a man and a woman, and the man leads and the woman follows. And Dancing with the Stars, for all of its wonderful popularity, and it certainly has heightened the profile of dance in this country, but in the American version of Dancing with the Stars, 2 men and 2 women cannot compete. And I would love to see that shattered, and I would love to see some of our stars show up on Dancing with the Stars. I would love to see that happen.
Well, that's actually one of the things that I'm hoping was going to happen, because we'll get to this in a minute. Got to get to a lot in a minute, but we'll get to this. There is a star who shone through the firmament in this film for me, and I'm sure for everyone who sees it, and you know who that is. But we'll get to that. We'll get to
they
that.
All shone through for me.
Well, yes, I know, but there's like a mega presence on this film, other than you, because your mega presence is all over this film. You are the god of the film. But I'm talking about on camera. Susan, by the way, says, "Damn, he's putting your feet to the coals." You mentioned something at the very beginning of our chat, and I want to pick up on that because this is very. Also, very powerful, I think. I've noticed, especially on Netflix, and I don't want to get into politics with you now or anything, and I don't want to upset you in any way, so we're not going to discuss certain aspects of this, but I think your film belongs on Netflix. So
that would make me very happy.
I mean, I think this film has got Netflix written all over it, and I think it would be one of their biggest successes. And I don't kiss up to anyone. I mean, people know that if I don't like something, or I don't talk about it. But anyway, I've noticed, as I said, especially on Netflix, that, and you've touched on this before, the documentaries have moved away from the traditional voiceover, linking the film together. And you also have the people you are filming speaking to you. You're off camera, obviously asking the questions, but only a couple of times are you heard. And they're linking their lives to the plot of the film with both the brilliant original music you've had created for this, and of course that very familiar dance music that you want to get up and dance around. Do you feel then? And this was a question I really needed to ask you. Why, I don't know, because I am who I am. Saying what I've just said, do you feel that you directed this film, or rather you curated it?
That's a great question. Both, I guess. Curated, along with Dina in the edit room. Yeah. But certainly directed in the sense of casting, in the field, managing scenes, having a vision. So it's really an interesting combination, but I like that. I mean, that word curated is perhaps overused these days, but it's, in this case, I think it's a good word, and it's an apt one. And the director had to step back from the personal connection that I did and have forged with the stars, because they did become part of my life. And that was not just a professional relationship, but it did become a very personal relationship. And we're still in touch all the time. I was just with Ernesto and Nikolai yesterday shooting a video that's for the New York Times, for an Instagram video series that they do about dance, which was a great opportunity. And I was in New Zealand in May and stayed with Kieren's family, which was a great thrill. Kieren is one of our stars who's from New Zealand. So there is a very personal connection, but I had to step back from that and that's the director's hat, maybe the curator's also. And as Dina kept saying to me in the edit room, your loyalty is to the film. So it was our obligation was to be honest and fair, but not saccharine. We weren't creating a Valentine to these people as much as I love them all. We were creating a film that could live on its own terms for people who didn't know them and perhaps had no familiarity with this world.
Yeah.
So that answers your question, but
yeah. Well, thank you. I love your answers because they've got a lot of thought to them, and I'm hoping I try to avoid asking you too many of the same old questions that you've been barraged with. But I give an awful lot of thought to the process, and also, you know, this is all about what my interest is, and I hope the audience comes along for the ride. So carrying on from that thought, did you in any way become a mother figure or a big sister or even a mentor to the subjects in your film? And the thing that I think you had to have happened is, did their past and present lives affect you emotionally?
Two different questions. I hope I didn't become a mother figure, Philip.
I hesitated when I wrote that, but let's face it, they are quite young.
Yes.
So you could be you could be in your 30s and still have those kids.
I think they're all fully formed human beings who originally probably tolerated me and then hopefully came to feel something more than that. And yes, their life journeys and struggles and evolution touched me and continue to touch me, which I think speaks to the second half of your question.
Yeah.
And that had to be true, or we probably couldn't have finished making the film. The audience had to come to care about them in the same way that I did for this to work. Otherwise, it's a vanity project. And this isn't a video diary. I was trying to make a film that would speak to a large and diverse audience on a number of different levels. And it may be because you see yourself, it may be because you see a relative or a friend, it may be because you just caught up in learning about a world that you didn't know existed. I mean, there's a lot of different levels on which one might come to this. And so, in a way, my journey of discovery is the same one that I hope viewers will take. And which is why I love when you said that it unfolds in some ways like a novel. I think that one hope Dina and I had when we were making this was that it would unfold like a narrative feature film, as if there had been a script and storyboarded and characters who were actors, but real life. And they're not actors. It was interesting because when we had our New York Festival premiere last fall, and one of the star's significant others came up to me. It was a very generous thing for him to do, and he said, "Today is your day." And I said, "No, it's all of our day." And he said, "Well, it's your day because we just showed up. We didn't do anything else. We just showed up." And it was like, well, okay, you did a little more than that, but but they were living their lives. They just let the camera do that too.
I forgot that these people weren't actors at some point. Hi, Steve. I have to just say hello. Hi, Steve. Doing great, thank you. Rabina says it's great what you're doing. She really appreciates this. Let me backtrack a second delve into your world just a little bit. My wife, Linda, ladies and gentlemen, or ladies and germs, as I prefer to call you, as you know, introduced Gail and me. Introduced Gail and I. Introduced Gail and me. That's correct. Yes, I'm just thinking what my English teacher would have said. She would have probably shot herself by now. My wife Linda introduced us since Gail and Linda knew each other when the world was young. They went to school together. Linda recalls you, Gail, as being very studious and very, very smart. She didn't want me to tell you that because she didn't want to get embarrassed. And the most important part, but I thought about that, the most important part of being a focused student is to be passionate about your work and to use your brain muscles like a sponge, which you in fact did when I started researching you. You did that when you worked at both CBS and ABC. You did what actors tell me they do when they say they work with greater actors and they steal from them. They don't steal from them. They sponge off them. They learn things. So when you were at CBS and ABC, especially in the editing rooms where the magic of the craft which you learned percolates, what aspect of that experience was the most orgasmic for you?
That's interesting. I think it became, and Linda and I have this in common, being of the same generation.
She told me she was much younger than you.
Oh, no, quite the contrary.
Please continue. Or a divorce might be pending when she watches this back.
I was on this mission to make a difference, save the world. I was a great idealist. And I think when I got to 60 Minutes in particular, and I was a complete baby in the business, I knew nothing. I saw that, and this was at 60 Minutes in its heyday, when I was lucky enough to arrive as a nobody, as a baby. And I saw that you actually potentially could have an impact, could make a difference, could change hearts and minds, could, in a very different way than I'd envisioned, participate. And I loved the idea of storytelling. I think that had been with me from the time I was a little girl. Whether it was editing a grammar school paper or a high school paper, always there'd been this storytelling notion. So the idea that you could tell stories and feed your own kind of creative itch and also be useful in the world was intoxicating. And when I was a baby at 60 Minutes, I was very lucky that I did have the opportunity to sit in edit rooms and sponge is a good word for it, to just kind of take in what was going on and how story was crafted. And sometimes there'd be nobody in the edit room but the editor and me. And they were very, and they were very, very sharing and very open, and I suppose to some extent flattered that somebody was that interested in their craft that just wanted to hang out and watch and take that all in. And that was so juicy for me that I figured out, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Because in my first role there, that's not what I was doing. I was actually the spokesperson for 60 Minutes the year that they went to #1 in the ratings. And so that was a different kind of role. And then I was able to make that kind of migration and that transformation. But that was what turned me on, was the idea that you could tell stories, you could feed your creativity, but you could also say something that other people might resonate for other people.
I'm just thinking I could make some money now. I could sell out to the fake press that Gail Freedman said on Phillip Silverstone's show that she made CBS #1.
She did not say that.
Pauline, thank you very much. Pauline, another friend, Pauline Kingman, says that she's loving this. Really interesting. You and I suffer the same dreadful illness, Gail. We are compulsive perfectionists. We also like to find, your words, the bones of an idea, which we can then flesh out, research, mold into our dream topic, story, project, whatever. So what bones did you initially find in this story that captivated you enough to make this film?
It's another good question. Where it began is not necessarily where it went. As you mentioned at the beginning, I had just finished spending a year and a half, 2 years, making a remarkably different film about the making of the 9/11 memorial in New York City. And it wasn't a depressing film per se, but it was obviously rooted in tragedy. And I think when I finished that, selfishly, I was just looking for something different, something that was going to feed my spirit in a different way. And my lead cinematographer, Joel Shapiro, who I've worked with for a number of years, Joel and I were trading ideas back and forth and not coming up with anything. And then he happened to mention that he'd grown up in Philadelphia, as a matter of fact, very close, but we hadn't known each other as kids, that he'd grown up and with a girl who he hadn't seen since they were 12 years old, but his cousin kept in touch with her, and she ran some kind of same-sex dance group on the West Coast. Turns out that was Barbara, who gives the vertical expression of a horizontal desire line. But they hadn't seen each other since they were 12 years old, but his cousin kept in touch with her, and he just mentioned that, and I said, ooh, I can't even tell you why, Phillip. I mean, something in the back of my head just kind of exploded. And I said, well, I love that. Tell me more. What else do you know? And he said, that's it. That's what I know. And I said, well, can you find out more? And he said, no, that's what you do. So I said, well, you tell Barbara that I'm going to call her. And so it began as something that attracted me because it was, to me, new and novel, gorgeous. I loved the dance and the artistry and the music and the joyousness of it and the celebratory part. And that's where it started. And then, like you said, I love to dig in on the bones. And the more I did dig in, the more that I came to see that there was a lot of texture, there was a lot of nuance, there were a lot of levels, and that there was this whole sort of small p political dimension to it. Because, as I like to say, the dancers are living the issues rather than working the issues. And so it was, I was hooked, and I was completely hooked.
I'm glad you were. I just want to ask you one other question here, because I know this is a part of the business that so many people don't enjoy. I read you say in one place that you actually get a kick out of it. You didn't say that you get a kick out of it, but it doesn't bother you that much. But after so much success under your belt, and let's face it, you've done a lot, and you've had the recognition. Although I think that this film is going to be a major, we'll get to that in a second as well. A major accomplishment for you, because I think it is so brilliant. But have I told you how brilliant I think it? No, anyway. Is it easier now for you to get backing for your films?
Oh, no. And I do mind it, actually.
Oh, okay.
No, it doesn't get easier. It's really hard. And I mean, it's deeply uncomfortable for me. That role. I don't like asking for money. On one level, it feels like, why am I asking you to fund my dream? There are people who are naturals at that part of the process, and I envy them that, because it is a skill for sure. Despite the fact that I think I lack that skill set, this film got made, and that was due in large measure to the incredible goodwill and generosity of a lot of people, not only my lead donors, who are remarkable people, but also, I mean, my film editor, who, thank God we have a 20-plus year relationship, because she can get paid for this film, not a penny. And my crew didn't always get paid, and I mean, people. The man who originally created our website did it as an act of love. There was an incredible amount of goodwill that came to this project that also fed me, because there were times when I wasn't sure we were going to be able to pull it off. So no, I don't enjoy the fundraising, but it's a necessary evil, because unlike in Europe, the arts are
That's
Very hard to
that's so unfair. That's so unfair that a film like this, and for those of you who are watching our chat here, please make a point to share this conversation with anyone you think could be interested. This is truly, it's not a long film, but it's truly one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. I have to ask you something else. I mean, I have to ask you. I keep saying this. I don't have to ask you. I want to ask you something else. Hot to Trot, your new film that's coming out on August the 24th, I'm looking at today's date, has played at so many festivals and has already garnered so many awards. My God, I mean, I don't know how you fit them all on one page when you're showing a promotional shot. Do you still, now this is assuming that you did it in the first place, hide in a corner and listen to the comments of the audience as they leave the screening?
I don't do that, although perhaps I should.
Oh, okay.
What I do enjoy a great deal is engaging in conversation with the audience. One of the nice things about film festivals is that there's almost always a Q&A, a dialogue that takes place afterwards, and I enjoy that tremendously because I love to hear other people's questions, their observations.
Of course, yeah.
And that's a delight. That part is a thrill. And we'll be doing that opening weekend in New York at the Quad, and we'll be doing it in LA beginning September 14th at the Laemmle Music Hall, and every other place that we go where I can show up. The dancers come too. Dina comes too. I mean, it's a family affair.
It sounds great, and of course, everybody you can see under on the screen. I've got the website for hottotrotfilm.com, and that's where you go to find out where it's going to be playing and all the information you need to know. How did you find the dancers?
Well, Emily and Kieren, our lead female dance couple, I met at my first major shoot at April Follies, which is a big dance competition in the Bay Area, and I met them there. And they were, by that time, a well-established dance couple, and I knew pretty quickly that they were going to stay in the film. They were comfortable with the process. They were great dancers. They had interesting backstories. And then through a judge, you see briefly in the film Benjamin Zungson. He's the man who talks about it's Fred and Fred, etc., etc. And he introduced.
Wait a minute, is he the man with the bow tie, or is he the Australian English guy? I can't figure out who he is.
Exactly, he's German. Yes,
he's German. The one with the bow tie.
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
He says it's Fred and Ginger and Ginger, and
yes,
then he
yes.
And he introduced me. He's based in New York, and Benjamin introduced me to Ernesto. And Ernesto, being very shy, we met, and he proceeded to tell me his whole life story, and he was a gorgeous dancer, but he didn't have a dance partner at the time, and so that I knew I had Emily and Kieren, who were a well-established dance couple. I was interested in exploring the dynamic of what happens with a new dance couple, because are we allowed to curse on this show?
You can curse, yes, okay.
As Ernesto says in the film about his one dance partnership, it's a fucking marriage for sure, but without the fucking.
That was classic. That was so classic. Yes.
Yeah, and the dynamic of that relationship was something I really wanted to explore. And so when Ernesto found a dance partner, Robbie, wonderful dancer. Ernesto is from Costa Rica. Robbie is from Hungary. And they were both well-established dancers, but not with each other. And so I knew that I had something that could really work. Then something changed in Robbie's life, as evolves over the course of the film. And Robbie was no longer competing. And so Ernesto had to then, he really wanted to be in a film. And he really wanted to go to the Gay Games. So he cajoled Nikolai, who was a fabulous Russian dancer, but Nikolai had never danced same sex before. He had danced with women his whole life from the time he was a little boy.
Right.
So Ernesto convinced Nikolai that they should dance together, and that ended up being a brilliant pairing and a complete study in opposites. And so we were off to the races. I knew I had my lead dancers. Get back to what you were saying. Who shone through for you?
I'm going to get to that in a minute. I will get back to that. I was going to ask you to give a thumbnail, but I don't want to waste time on that, on each of the people here. You've touched on it. And also, ladies and gentlemen, you can read about each of the dancers at the hottotrotfilm.com. So you can read about them there. And also, you should see the bloody film. We don't have to tell you all about them. I mean, at the end of this conversation, which will be an hour long, you should have got some kind of feel for what's going on here. Do you think that same-sex dancers find dance more of an escape than a heterosexual dancer who may also bring a lot of emotional baggage to the rehearsal studio? Is there any distinction here, do you think? Or is it just that you were focusing on same-sex dancers, and so, of course, they had baggage like everyone else. It sucks, the baggage they have. But I was just wondering if you've ever given any thought to that.
I think there are a lot of distinctions. I'm not sure if it's because it's more of an escape necessarily, although it might be. I think that there is a real affirmation of self and that self-expression piece. While it's true for any dancer, I think, again, as Benjamin says in the film, so many of the dances are an expression of who one is and about love and about romance. And so when you're dancing with the gender that you actually prefer, that's much more meaningful. So I think there is an self-expression, an affirmation of self, a celebration of here we are free to be who we are, which is not welcomed or even allowed at mainstream competitions. There's also a whole dimension of same-sex dance with the whole lead-follow that's unique to same-sex dance.
Yes.
Right? It's not a man leading and a woman following. It's two roles, as you saw in the trailer.
Yeah.
Lead, follow. And they switch it up, sometimes within a dance. Each one will lead and then follow. And I think, talk about taking like norm gender roles and throwing them up in the air and saying, who cares? So I think there are a lot of differences that exist on a lot of levels. I don't think it's just that it's two men or two women. I think that it's also that it's something much richer and much deeper, and that, it's very meaningful.
I don't think, I'm thinking, just a thought occurred to me while you're saying this. I'm thinking to myself, Ginger Rogers leading Fred Astaire, that would never have happened.
No.
I'd love you to finish this sentence for me. I'm getting into my my actor's studio thing, but I'm not going to have you do the whoever it was, some French person's profound commentary on people's expressions that they love to hear and don't love to hear. But I'd love you to finish this sentence for me, and you can take a moment if you haven't thought about it before. And it's this: same-sex dance has given so much to the people who participate in it. It isn't about winning, it's about
one's personal best. It's about breaking boundaries. It's about living your passion.
I like that. That's exactly.
I guess I have thought about it. But you didn't tell me you were going to ask me that.
No, I didn't tell you anything. I never tell people what I'm going to ask. So, okay, I'm going to come back to something I alluded to earlier and something you asked me about 5 minutes ago. Is this film going to make a celebrity out of Ernesto, or a sex symbol, perhaps?
Yes, just ask him.
No, I mean, he says constantly how pretty he is. This is all I have. This is all I have. I have my beauty. I have my beauty. I have my looks, my body.
I can hear Ernesto laughing uproariously right now, and I hope he's watching, but I don't know. talk about star quality. He's
Dancing with the Stars. He has somehow you have got to wave your magic wand, because I'm telling you, and you should be his manager. And you can give up films, you can give up documentaries. You're going to make so much money with him.
Well, he would certainly love the making a lot of money part. I don't know if he'd love me managing him part. He's quite a charismatic, amazing character. But he is all that, but he's also just an amazing human being with a lot of heart and a lot of soul, and who's come through a lot of pain. Somebody on one of the early reviews that came in talked about, it's not giving too much away, Ernesto had some addiction in his past, and that's often mentioned when people talk about the film. And he posted something on Facebook where he said, I'm always like the ex-junkie. And I said, that is so not what you are. You are somebody who has dealt with what life threw at them and come through triumphant.
Oh, he shines through on this, and I truly hope he doesn't have any negative feeling about the way he's portraying himself. I just want to quickly, I started to do this. I wanted to very quickly just show, this is a picture of Ernesto and Gail and Nikolai, clearly not doing much work, just enjoying the rays there. This is a picture, I love this. This is the best picture of all. This is Nikolai just looking at the camera in a kind of a seductive way. You know the one I'm talking about, Gail. It's an amazing photograph. This is Emily and Kieren. Their museum dance. They're dancing outside of a museum, which we see in the film. That is absolutely beautiful.
Well, that's actually Emily and Katerina dancing outside at the museum.
Oh, okay.
That's Emily's girlfriend, Katerina.
Oh, so it is. Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Okay, my first bloop of the show. You're right. This is Ernesto and Nikolai. They're looking a bit too butch there. Let's see. Let's see. This is Ernesto and Robbie, who I adored Robbie. I mean, I guess if I was going to be gay, I'd go for Robbie, because he's low key on that. He's not in love with himself. I couldn't go with a queen. I mean, I hung out my whole life with in the gay world in London with my closest friend, who sadly we lost in the first in the first wave of AIDS. But I hung out with some great queens. I mean, there was the Queen of England, Elizabeth. There's 1,000 of queens in England. But anyway, I'm sorry, but the star of your film is too much of a queen for me. But anyway, there's Katerina. Is that Katerina and Emily? Yes, holding hands, looking down. Yeah. Yep. And that's it. They're the photographs. What do you hope?
Go ahead. Can I say one other thing before you get to that, if I may?
Yes, of course.
The controlling director. It's probably come across to your audience, but another really central kind of sub-theme, if you will, of this film is that most of our stars are immigrants. And that didn't start out as something I was aiming to do, but it sure did turn out to be a very powerful part of the film, and what began as a lucky accident became very intentional.
It was, and let's face it, if we look at the world of art, if we look at the world of dance, if we look at the great ballet dancers of our generation, I think most of them are Russian, and so they were immigrants. Some of the great, I mean, I think we don't want to get onto the politics or into the politics here, but it's that immigrant population in the arts that has driven us forward, and which hopefully will drive this film forward, will drive. And I think it's these very strong personalities who are so passionate about their craft and their art. And I do have to say that that I think to some extent, you said it's not. You said before, I think you said that it's not a Valentine. I do think that this is a love letter to these people, and I hope that the various gay, the LGBTQ groups support this film because I see it as a love letter. I think it was made with passion, compassion, and great feeling and respect for these people. So that's just an aside here, but I
love letter is deeper than a Valentine. I like that.
So I'm going to ask the obvious last question, but it's a question that you've probably already addressed, but I'm going to ask it as a wrap-up question as we hit the hour mark here. What do you hope? You know how to finish this question, but what do you hope the audience will take away from your film and discuss on their drive home from the cinema?
How much more unites us than divides us, potentially, at a time when we're so incredibly polarized. The deep humanity of each and every one of these folks, and their amazing artistry and brilliance, and how that feeds us as an audience.
Excellent. Well, I knew this was going to be the best interview that I've had since we started doing this series.
Say that to everybody.
No, honestly, I have been looking forward to this, and we also have to do it on the podcast as well. That means we need to get together at some point, because I don't do podcasts other than one-to-one, face-to-face, person-to-person. Well, you can lead, though. My guest, ladies and gentlemen, I would never dance with you, A, because I can't dance, and I end up tripping up waiters all around, and 2, because I know you're going to lead. And listen, I have got to interview Ernesto, but you've got to be there.
That could absolutely be arranged.
I know, I've got to talk to you about that. But for now, let me just tell everyone, my guest has been Gail Freedman, the director and producer of the mega amazing documentary Hot to Trot, and it's hottotrotfilm.com. It opens on Friday, August the 24th, 2018, this year. To find out where you can see my favorite documentary of the year, possibly of the decade, or maybe of the century, I just told you, go to hottotrotfilm.com, which of course is going to be linked underneath wherever you're watching this. Gail, good luck with this brilliant film, and I look forward to seeing you in person very soon. I tell you what I'm going to do for those late arrivers. And hi everyone, I haven't said hi to everyone, but you've all said that you've loved this conversation, and I think you'll all agree with me that this is the best one that we've had here. So watch it again if you missed the beginning. But if you did miss the beginning, I'm going to close with a 3-minute trailer for Hot to Trot. I think that'll give you a really good flavor. And Gail, I'm going to sign off with you. I may give you a call after the show just for a wrap up, but not on the show. So I am going to cut you off in a minute. I'm going to say I love you very much because you gave me. This is terrible if my wife hears it. You gave me, Gail. I was going to say, let me finish that sentence. I love you very much because you gave me so much pleasure the other night. How do I say that without? How do I get myself? I know how I get myself out of it. Charlie, roll the film. Good night, Gail.
Thank you, darling.
Okay.
Bye.
All the way from Yonkers, New York, Ernesto Palmer dancing with Nikolai Shvakov. Your US champion, Emily and Kieren from San Francisco. April Folly same-sex dance sport competition. Our evening extravaganza begins right now with a showcase of champions.
Dancing is going to be one of the last bastions of homophobia to fall because it is a vertical expression of a horizontal desire.
Don't pull.
You're not leading. You're not leading.
Who you leading?
Yes.
He's Russian and I'm Latino. Culture-wise, he's really dominant, and I'm more passive. I didn't ever had a childhood that I would say like someone inspired me to be something. You know, it makes me feel like, oh, I accomplished this, even though I don't have all these other things that other people do have.
To my parents, I finally came out about like when I was 30. I was married, you know. I tried to do, you know, the right thing, you know.
There is no guy's part.
Right. And there's no girl's part.
No.
It's just, you know, it's just parts and somebody does them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For me, the biggest stressor on competition day is my blood sugar, not the actual dancing. I have type 1 diabetes and I've had it my entire life. I was diagnosed when I was 3.
I didn't want to actively kill myself, but if something happened and I was no longer around, that would be just fine. And dance was a huge part of keeping me on the planet.
I got a phone call one Saturday afternoon. Kieren said, I've got something to tell you. I think I'm gay.
When she told me, my first thought was, oh, okay. What are my friends going to say?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Here at Gay Games 9 at the dance sport event.
Yesterday we were not even on the plane yet, and I had a meltdown. My blood sugar shot through the ceiling completely unexpectedly, and I just kind of lost it. I didn't want to dance, and I didn't care how it went. That's never happened to me ever before in a competition.
I was a total drug addict. Total 100% drug addict.
Of what?
Crystal meth.
How long did you use meth?
Total of 5 years. If I'm destroying the only thing that I had, which is my beauty, what do I have after that?
I told my father, I understand you embarrassed. I understand it's gonna be not the topic of conversation at the table with your friends. And I said, listen, if like you can't deal with this, I understand, but you know, this is what I'm doing.
Some cheekbones. We all want cheekbones.
It's going to be a close call tonight in this World Championship final.